in the questions here for Coach Lee.
What's your preference for number of teams in the playoff?
As many as we can, have and make it make sense. I mean, I don't have a number that I go to bed at night thinking about this would be perfect. I think it's an important time for us to, not be spectators in this and not just have opinions to have opinions. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into these decisions, and a football coach's opinion matters some. I mean, I try to focus on the things with scheduling, how we can tighten the season, the length of the season down. I think that's important. There's certain operational things that I think we need to be looking at, but the playoff conversation is only going to happen in a few offices. And I love the idea of increased participation. We left here a year ago, really thinking 16 was a good next step. Obviously, that we fell short in that, but change is coming. We'll be prepared for it, but an expanded playoff would be great. I just don't have a real opinion on what that number is.
What kind of feedback have you gotten since the release from the AFCA's recommendation?
I think a lot of misunderstanding around what that recommendation was. Obviously, being on the board and sitting on the board as president, I mean, there was no playoff model supported in that. I think what the recognition was twofold. One, the primary point of contention there for us was, how do we get the season wrapped up by that second Monday in January? I think that's really important to tie the conclusion of the season to more closely to the semester end, and also in the portal window, I think would alleviate a lot of some of the more public issues where we have teams playing beyond the window. But to do that and to also expand the playoff, which I do believe is inevitable, wherever that next number is, again, I don't know where that's going to land, but you're going to have to reimagine the way college football season finishes. I mean, it's just inevitable that these things are going to have to be examined. So what does that mean? It means you're going to have to scrutinize the conference championships. You're going to have to scrutinize that day designated for Army, Navy, and maybe tighten it down the window. All the things that were in the release are things that we know are going to need to be reevaluated. Again, the spirit of that release was to say we have to make sure that the conclusion of the season is a priority in taking the next steps. And again, these, I don't know everything. I know that there's already contracts in place. I think this is a conversation more for 2 years down the road, but I think the seeds need to be planted now around what this needs to look like and how we best serve our game, but more importantly, the players within the game. I mean, this has to be about the experience of our teams, the experience of our student athletes, and that was. You asked about the feedback or the response. The response is real because the frame that people see the world right now, everything's about this is about a 2014 playoff. That certainly was not. We were very intentional about not supporting a model. Our deal was let's fight for what we think will benefit our game and benefit our student athletes.
As you look at those pressure points at the end of the season, what are maybe your personal, where you feel the strongest that changes could be made to speed it up or condense that postseason?
Well, you have. I mean, it's interesting. I think to sit up here and to proclaim to be an expert around how these things work. I mean, I tend to keep my attention pretty narrowly focused on Vanderbilt football, and try to do the best I can as the head coach at Vanderbilt. But the long delays that some teams have experienced in the playoffs, where they get bye weeks and I think it was 25 days or almost it's like a whole nother fall camp. I think that can dilute the competitive product. I think what we've done is we've done the best we can to build the plane as we're flying, and it's just inevitable that these things have to evolve forward. We have traditions at the end of our season that are really sacred to us, and yet we're going to reach a point where it's less about the emotional connectivity to what we've known and more about what's practical for the game moving forward and what's the vision for this over the next 10 years. And I don't know that we live in a 10-year society right now. I mean, it's like what's lunch for tomorrow. Personally, I would love to see us focus on let's start with the end in mind. Let's focus on how we keep January 1st sacred in college football. I think that's important. I think that's so doable. Let's find those slots where we're not in competition with the NFL. I think that's important, and I think that's doable. Let's reimagine how we bring the season to a conclusion. I, for one, love conference championship games. I tell my team every time we meet that I want to play and I want to win one of those. So yeah, I don't have I enjoy that. I think especially playing a league like the SEC, the idea that you can leave a field with a trophy that says SEC champion on it, that is really meaningful to me. And I understand too that's going to be something that commissioner and his peers reevaluate. With all that said, I think what this thing looks like again in 3 years is we need to put everything on the table and just say what is the best path through here, and how do we best protect our game, and how do we also best serve the players, the student athletes, and then there are so many things beyond just the playoff format that obviously need to be addressed, need to be thought about, and really I think hopefully in our meetings over the next couple of days we'll spend time talking about those things too.
How do you feel about the 9 games schedule?
I love it. I think it's I think it's great for fans. I think it's great for our team. If you ask our players, what their preference is, they want to play in games that are on the biggest stages and that matter. As a competitor, I feel the same way. And, we understand that this adds another loss to 8 teams, right? That's inevitable when you add an SEC game, but that's the kind of football I want to sign up for. Play against the best in the greatest environments, and another chance to do that I think serves our fans. I think it's great for our players, and it'll be interesting going through it. Obviously, that there's a level of complexity when it comes to just how you sustain performance through a season, how you keep a team healthy. You add another conference game. All these games are meaningful, so I do expect the wear and tear will be different, especially in a year where we have one bye week. So it's there's going to be some learning through the experience, but I think for me personally, I love the 9th game, and I think it'll be great for our sport.
Clark, can you speak to the challenge? You have generational momentum right now at Vanderbilt on the field. What's the process been like to try to sustain that, and how big of a role did Jared's presence in the body play keeping going?
Yeah, I mean, there's sustaining it is about finding the margins for improvement, and that's just about how you want to come to work every day. I mean, there's plenty of things that we can do better. Let's start with third down defense. How granular, Pete, do you want to go on this? But, if we can marginally improve third down defense, we're gonna better position our team. I think when you look at last year, one of the measures that held our team back when it came to playoff evaluation was our defensive performance. So if we can address that, I think there are things that we've locked into place systematically on offense. Obviously, we're going to have to replace a quarterback, replace a lot of production, but we have we really believe in our running back room. Obviously, we have a receiver room that returns a bunch of production too. Cole Spence is a tight end, is a guy that's played a lot of snaps for us. I've got a ton of faith in our offensive line room, our coaches and our players in there. I think there's a real world where you're going to see an improved offense. Now, the decision that will dictate everything will be who plays quarterback, right? And, Jared's going to be a part of that competition. And I know that's not specifically what you're asking, but we believe in the things that he brings to the table, and we need to see him through training camp demonstrate command of the offense. And if he can do that, he's going to have a shot to win the job. And if he can't, obviously he needs time to develop in the system a little longer. But focusing on those margins for improvement, again, I mentioned third down defense. How do we get Martell Height loose as a punt returner? We did that well in 24. We were among the worst at that in 25. So another chance for us to improve field position, and winning at Vanderbilt's about all 3 phases. We have to get that done. So as far as the momentum, it feels good. You kind of live in the wake of what you create. And so I've been up here as a 2-win coach. It's nice to be up here as a 10-win coach. That matters. I think people have always appreciated when they've spent time with us internally, what we do and how we do it. That's members of the media, that's coaches, that's players, that's recruits. Now that we have proof of concept, I think it kind of affirms decision and also gives us a chance to reach into a deeper pool of people we can pull in. We have to be very intentional about not losing focus on the things that make Vanderbilt successful. This is not a program where you come and you're validated by the world, for your decision. It's a place for hard-nosed, chip-on-the-shoulder type people that want to come and roll their sleeves up and go to work. That is Vanderbilt football. We will not deviate from that. So, I didn't come to Vanderbilt for a 10-win season. I came to win a national championship. That's what I'm focused on. I know that we have ground to cover to be able to do that. And so to try to sustain and build upon momentum is about finding the margins going to allow us to do that.
Does the mindset need to be different coming off a 10-win season than it does coming off a 2-win season, or does it need to be the same?
It's not changing mindset. It's you constantly make small calibration shifts, but it has nothing to do with the previous year results. I think we can use it to say, hey, here's how we're getting closer, but we haven't crossed the line. And so, what are those things? What do we every cycle we end with a well, better, learned. What do we do well? What do we think we need to do better? What have we learned? And you're constantly just trying to evolve the operation forward. But it's not a change. And I think because we're all a little fear based, I think you're going to step in, or I've already stepped in to this year, fighting against this idea of like we're not going to become complacent. But I think when you spend too much time attached to that kind of motivation, you're like, rather than focus on what this can be at its highest level, you're focused on what you don't want it to be. I think that can be a conflict. And so my job is to try to keep a vision in front of everyone and say, this is what we're aiming for. This is our aspiration for the best version of Vanderbilt football. Let's all get aligned on how we can create that within our roles. And that really hasn't changed.
That's all we have time for. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Have you been to Australia, Coach?
Not been to Australia, no. Do I need to go?
Well, no, the partnership from the team.
Yeah.